October 22nd, 1992, Museum of Jewish Heritage Video History Project. My name is Naomi Rappaport. I am speaking to Genia Litwok, and this is tape 3. Genia, I'm going to go back for one thing which I forgot to ask you before. In the Lodz ghetto, did you have any personal contact with Rimkowski?
Never.
Never. Okay. Okay. We left you in the last tape in Freiburg. You were leaving Freiburg.
Yes.
And let's start from there.
Okay. The leaving process isn't a big thing because they just call us to an appeal, and they remember we have no belongings. We have one dress. Mm-hmm. We have one blanket that serves mm-hmm. as a coat, and a piece of soap, mm-hmm. and that's about it. So there's I don't have to go into the room to get mm-hmm. my belongings. Mm-hmm. They call us to and they say, you're going down, and we're going into, we're leaving. Mm-hmm. And that's about it. Mm-hmm. So I just hold on to my sister, and everybody else holds on to whoever they are with. And now again, we go in fives, and we got into trains, cattle trains, and we had no idea, but we knew from, my sister already told, this foreman was saying that the Russians and the Allies are coming close, so they want to get rid of mm-hmm. us. They don't want us to be the witnesses, mm-hmm. So yeah. They're trying to get rid of us. They're pushing mm-hmm. us.
Is this your first knowledge about what was going on?
Yes, probably. I didn't know how soon or what's going on. Absolutely no information, because by that time we didn't realize it, but Poland was already liberated mm-hmm. by Russia.
Mm-hmm. And you knew about the bombings?
We knew that they're bombing. This we saw. Mm-hmm. So we know that they're in trouble, because they bombed this big town, the Allies destroyed Dresden, so they must be in trouble. I forgot to mention, while this was going on, all of us were dancing the horror. Even though we thought the bomb will fall and kill us, we didn't care. As long as they're doing something to them, we didn't care. We were dancing the horror while the bombs were falling, thinking if it falls, it's just as well. We'd rather be killed by them than by the Germans. So we really nobody gave it a thought. Nobody was afraid. I forgot to mention that's a very, interesting thing, yes. That no one was afraid. We just said it's better this way. Okay, now we are on the way in those cattle cars, and they do not give us much food. We're going through different towns, countries we don't know. But one night we stop someplace, and we hear the language, and it's Czechoslovakia. And they stopped like overnight. They let us go down, and no bathrooms. We were just go down for a few minutes, and the food was almost no food. People were dying in those cars, fainting. At one point, now we're leaving Czechoslovakia already, going toward Austria, and at one point my sister fainted. So there was just a little window, if you know what the cars look like, where they transport cattle. It's just a little window, so that everybody wants a little fresh air. So they're making room for my sister to have this, but it didn't help. She was fainting, so someone started knocking on the wall of the train. Someone is fainted. There were so many fainting, they didn't care. But for some reason, assessment opened the door, and not the door, he pushed it open. He said, which one is fainting? So they pointed to my sister, so he walked over and he smacked her. He smacked her with such force that until today she has a big scar right here. He split her neck about 3 inches. Now, how she survived, and there was an army, old men, because by that time old men were taken into the German army because the young ones were being killed. And we saw, he was standing and watching this, and tears were coming down his eyes. The first time I saw a German that had some feeling, he saw this blood coming out, and then he closed the door to the assessment, and we tried to, there happened to be a girl that was knew what she was doing, so she was holding it. Everybody was tearing the dresses to give her light dresses to wrap it up, and she survived. She has a big, ugly scar. It goes like that. My sister's beautiful and very successful businesswoman, and she will not go to plastic surgery. She will not fix that scar. She wants this to everyone to see this. Anyway, and now we're arriving in Mauthausen. We're arriving after, I don't remember how long. We're arriving in Mauthausen. Mauthausen is a very big camp. Only men. There were never women there. And this is very close to the end of the war. So they change again. When you from one camp to another, they change your clothes. So they take this dress that you wore for 9 months. They have no dresses because they're men. So they give us pajamas, men's pajamas. All right, but this was the first time that we knew that they were in trouble, because there were a lot of men walking around, not in stripes, but in blue uniforms. And these were non-Jewish guys, Polacks, Czechs. Between them were Jews who had Polish papers. And they saw these women, and they start whispering to us, because now the SS isn't so, they see the end is near. So they told us that they're in trouble, that we just have to hold on, and they gave
in what
us
language?
What language? Polish, Czech, what language, whatever. You can understand Czechoslovakian, but mostly Polish. And we happened to find one man that was a Jew who had made believe he was a Polak. And he came in and he told us that just take it easy, the end is near. Just hold on to each other. All right, so now they put us in barracks, horrible barracks. In those pajamas. We're walking around in pajamas because there is nothing else. They have nothing for women. But we did get from these guys, they once in a while they would come in and give us a Red Cross package, which was the worst thing they could do with food. The Red Cross, they had a can of peanut butter, and so we were sharing it between us. But some girls, because we didn't eat for such a long time, got diarrhea, and it was bad. It was so bad, people were getting sick. Now it's May 3rd, I think, May 3rd, 1945. And there is like a false alarm. Somebody runs into the barracks and screams, "The Americans are here." So everyone, a lot of people were very sick. A lot of women were very sick, but everyone runs out to greet the American armed force. It was a false alarm. The Germans were standing there, and they killed so many. They were just standing there with a gun. And they're just whoever they wanted, they killed. So we were back in the barracks, whoever made it back. Now, May 5th, the American Army Rainbow Division is liberating Mauthausen. And again, someone is coming in and screaming, "The Americans are here," and nobody moves. Nobody goes, we just sitting, waiting. And the feeling of all of a sudden the door opens and there are Americans coming, it's incredible. Anyway, this they did liberate us. And they came in and they looked at us, we were laying there like skeletons. And next to us, which was the most horrible scene, and everybody writes about it in books, there were thousands and thousands of Jewish men, skeletons laying in a heap. They didn't even burn the bodies. They were just laying there behind a barbed wire. All the Jewish guys were
Had you been
naked.
seeing this all the time?
Yes, well, we saw it, we saw it. And we knew they were Jews because the others were dressed. And it was terrible. It was incredible. People were saying that some people were even eating bodies. I never saw it. But it was so incredible. Skeletons, heaps, thousands and thousands of men. All right, now we have the American Army. In the American Army, they want to do something for us. They look at us and they, my God, they could not even comprehend it was such. You can imagine these human beings that don't look like human beings. And they said, first, they brought a lot of food, which was a little bit of a mistake. Nobody was, because everybody got diarrhea. And I would say that a quarter of the people died of diarrhea because they started eating and they had empty stomachs and all this. It was horrendous. And then they realized that the army doctors came in, American doctors. They came in and they realized what was going on, so they stopped it and they started giving us light food. They were cooking soups, you know, no more peanut butter and no more these rations, because every American soldier wanted to do something. They walked over and they said, do you want to go to town and get some clothes? I'll take you to an Austrian house and you can take some clothes. But nobody, who could move? We couldn't move. But they tried to give us army blankets and some things. And slowly they developed, you know, the system where my sister was well, I was sick. I had terrible pains in my stomach, and I really didn't know what it was. But I was getting attacks, and I was very sick, and I was screaming. And I forgot to mention to you that the Germans used to give me morphine. I don't know why they didn't kill me, but they gave me morphine to shut me up because I had such bad pains. I had gallstones, which I didn't know at 17. All right, now when they were coming, it's 3-4 days after liberation, and every day there's an inspection of the American Army's doctors coming in and MPs and looking if and it happened to be that I had an attack and I was crying. And once one doctor bent over and he talked to me, but I didn't. My sister spoke a little English, so she said that I'm in pain. 2 days later, an ambulance came in with AMPs, with a stretcher, and they took me. They took me to a GI hospital. Now you have to picture this. I'm a Jewish girl from Poland. Didn't speak too much. I just didn't understand English. The first doctor that I met in this GI hospital was a Chinese doctor. I just could not believe it. Now, they took me to help me, but it was a shock to me. My sister really didn't know where I was until I was there 2 weeks. They were for observation. In the meantime, Jewish doctors came out of, you know, from the camp, 3 doctors, which I have on that picture, and they sent me to an Austrian hospital with the American MPs. With that, this was a hospital of sisters, nuns. And they said that if I die, if they kill me, they're going to be responsible for it.
And your sister still did not know where you were?
Yeah, she knew at that point. So now everybody knew where I was already, because I wasn't the only one, but I needed, so they were so scared that they sent for a very big doctor, a surgeon, to operate on me. And he asked me if he can, I was little, I was shaved, so he says, wird man schneiden, Kleine, which means, can I cut you, little one? I said, yes, please. I didn't even ask questions. But I knew that the American Army is watching, that he won't do he's not going to kill me. Because there were a lot of soldiers, American soldiers, killed 2-3 days after they liberated. The Austrians are awful. They hanged 40 soldiers in the forest. And right in front, we were already liberated, so they were afraid they were going to kill me. Anyway, I was in this hospital. The nuns were. There was a big sign over my head. This is after the war. It said Jude, Jew. So the first visit that I had from my sister, she made such a scandal. She said, how dare you put this thing over her head? It's after the war. And she tore it to pieces, but they still did not give up. Anyway, all right, this is how I met my husband, I have to tell you. I'm coming to it. My sister was working now for the American Air Force. because she
Where
spoke.
were you?
I was in Linz, in a hospital. Linz is the town, Bindermichel is a suburb. Hart, where I told you where I was, is a suburb of Linz. Linz is the town where Hitler was born.
And that's where you were in the hospital?
Yes, that's why I'm in the hospital.
Okay, so now we have you in June 1945.
Right.
After liberation.
Yes. They already making a camp, displaced person camp, in Bindermichel.
You have some pictures. Are those the pictures from Linz?
Okay.
From Hart, or
This is a picture of
just under your chin?
of the camp, and we are sitting, I don't know how much you can see, but we are sitting in the windows. It's 3 floors, and we are so happy to be liberated and be together that we are sitting with our feet up outside the window on the 3rd floor. Okay.
And that is where?
Bindermichel. That's the displaced person camp that the Americans created for all the people that they took with them from Mauthausen.
I see.
Because Mauthausen was divided into 4 parts. That part of Austria, German, English, French, Russian, and American. And they said,
You can take the picture.
whoever wants to go with us, they crossed the Danube. So we went with them.
Yeah.
This is my sister working for the Air Force. She spoke some English. Okay, now I will show you, I worked in a makeshift hospital after, this is already a year and a half after, that we had to govern ourselves and help ourselves. These are 3 Jewish doctors and volunteers that help people. There was, we did everything in that Bindermichel for ourselves. Okay.
Which, are you in there? In that picture?
Yes, I'm in this picture.
Which one is you?
I'm right here next, on the right, the first one on the right.
First one.
Okay. I met my husband while in the hospital. My sister, working for the Air Force, has gotten some extra medication, and she wanted someone to bring it to me because she was working. So she just, in this camp, in Bindermichel, she came across my husband. She didn't know him, but he looked like he could be trusted or something. She asked him, would you mind going to my sister who's in the hospital and bring her this medication? And he said, yes, I wouldn't mind, I'm going. So he took a bus and came to the hospital during the day to visit me. That's how I met my husband. He never left.
And that was when?
Okay, now...
When was that?
That was 45, June, July, because I was in the hospital for a while.
Yeah.
Okay, and then after they operated on me, I came back. However, my incision was open for 6 months because it would not heal. So I had a suture for 6 months open, and until, because of the I was I was like a skeleton. So, but after 6 months it closed up. I have an ugly scar, but I was okay. They took out, I had gallstones at 17, which is quite unusual. And I came back to camp, and then I started working in this makeshift hospital. All of us worked. The only one that worked out was my sister and another girl that spoke English. She worked for the Air Force.
And what was life like for you and your sister, for you in this
It was,
camp?
well, we were happy to be alive. It was very, we didn't have much, but we had a dress or two or something. We were dancing and first, which is very important, there were lists coming from all camps, who is alive. We searched for family, if anybody is alive. And lists were coming from Palestine. My sister and I were trying to get to Palestine illegally, and we were caught in Italy and sent back to Bindermichel. We were caught on an American truck covered with, there were 8 girls, covered with blankets, trying to go to Cyprus and to Palestine. They
Who caught
us.
you?
In Italy, the police.
The Italian police?
Yes. And they sent us back, right back to the And then when I met my husband, he had an aunt here who sent him papers. And we got married, so he made papers for me to come to the United States too. My sister was a war bride. She met her husband, who was a pilot in the Air Force, a lieutenant pilot, and she married from Texas. So she went to Texas. And from all the people, she's the only one that I have. We have been separated. Thank God that we can afford now to see each other, but there was a time where we didn't see each other for a long time. She lived in Texas, then she lived in Salt Lake City, 14 years. Now she's in Seattle. But now we see each other quite often, and we talk on a daily basis, every single day.
When did you come to
the United States? I came May 18, 1949. And like I said, my husband had an aunt here, and we stayed with this aunt for 2 weeks.
Where?
In the Bronx, in New York City, in the Bronx. She had no children, and it wasn't very pleasant for us. So we just...
Why?
Because she wasn't a very pleasant person, her husband. They didn't understand how to have anyone in the house. Her husband asked me not to take a bath because the warm water cost money. One of those things. I really don't want to get into this.
Fine. Yeah.
But it wasn't pleasant. So 2 weeks after we were in the, my sister did come from Texas when we arrived and begged us to come to Texas with her.
Your sister came before you did?
Oh, she came in 47 as a war bride. She didn't come like we came, you know. She came through France, Cannes. She was, but she came in 49 in May. She said, I know this aunt because I stayed with her for 1 day. She said, come with me to the, but my husband knew that his parents and sister are coming from Russia. So he didn't want to leave them here, so we didn't. And so 2 weeks after we arrived in this country, we had gotten jobs. This was the end of May for Decoration Day weekend in Mount Freedom, New Jersey, in a hotel. My husband became a busboy. It was for Decoration Day weekend in a Jewish hotel, and I was supposed to help with children as helping the counselor, and also make the beds if need be. So that's what it was. We stayed there a whole summer. My first tip that somebody wanted to give me, I ran away because my God, how can I take a tip? I mean, this is different mentality, you know, coming from where I come from. I was so embarrassed. So people used to send me tips by mail, and the owner of the hotel said, you'll never get anything, you'll never get anything. You have to stay when they pay the bill and wait with a hand. I said, no, I won't. Anyway, we came back in September with pretty enough to get us an apartment and start looking for work, which we did. And at one time, my husband had 3 jobs, I had 2 jobs. We waited 2 years to have our first baby. Ziggy's parents came, and we rented an apartment, and they stayed with us for 4 years. And his sister.
You had never met his parents before?
I met them in Europe when we in 46. We didn't get married until they came from Russia. He will get into this a little bit more. Yes, I did meet them. They again stayed with us in Bindermich. They stayed with us, but they never worked in the United States because they were like in their 60s, late 50s, 60s. So even though my daughter was born in 51, I still went to work right. I think 3 weeks after.
What kind of work did you do?
I was working on in the jewelry district on Canal Street in a wholesale place. I was selling jewelry. I was pretty good at it. I lived in Manhattan at that time, and I used to take 2 subways, and I was pretty good at it. They gave me a job that I was able to see my child. I came at 10 and left at 3. I worked until my last week of pregnancy because we had parents to support, and then I went back. And again, 2.5 years later, my son was born. And I went back to work again. But then when we moved away from Manhattan, my husband had started his own business, and I did bookkeeping for him for 7 years. I worked until 5 years ago.
Did you maintain a relationship with people from the camps or from your town? Or
Always.
do you still?
We have a group of, it's a good question, because I wanted to make a point out of that. The reason why I can talk about it is that the same friends I had in Linz, in Austria, are still my friends today. What happened after the war is that we were talking to each other. What we didn't realize is that we were having group therapy. Everyone talked. Everyone talked about their experience, and we got it out of, out of our system. We constantly talk about it. Now, in my sister's case, her husband was an American. She has forgotten how to speak Polish, but that's not important. But she wasn't able to share with anyone her experience, and it took her until 1985, 84, I think, that she was able to make a documentary, and now she's talking about it all the time. But she was never able to talk at all about the camp at all.
Yeah. You had a picture there that you showed me
Yes.
of a reunion of
I have a picture.
of a reunion, or is that in the packet?
Yes, this is this is in Washington, D.C., gathering people from all over the world. And I'm here with my sister, or am I taking a picture? You can't see us. You can just see that here we are. This is when we're listening to the speeches. This is my sister and me.
What year is that?
This is in the 80, I don't remember exactly, 84, 85. Because this was the second gathering. There was one in Jerusalem, one in... And these are the same friends, there's my sister here too, that I had in Linz, Austria, and they're still my friends.
Are you on that picture?
I think I'm taking this picture. There's my husband is here. This is my best friend. That's my sister. Now, I know these people since 1945. And we are still very good friends.
Can you hold that up? I didn't get a clear shot.
You didn't
The
get
last
that?
one.
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
How much have you shared with your children?
Okay, our children, when we decided to have children, Ziggy and I, we said we are going to talk to them when they'll be able to understand. We're not going to scare them. We also decided not to put prejudice into them if we can help it when they were very young, because it starts from the cradle. And try not to forget and not to forgive, but not to hate. You should never forget and never forgive.
How did you do this?
Well, we started, I don't know, we just did not, I don't know, I just don't know, I remember when the book Exodus came out, we just talked about it to our daughter, who is a psychologist. We talked about it, and she said she knew before Exodus, the book came out, that she knew we are survivors. We are surrounded with survivors' friends, and the children talk to each other, and they know we speak different languages, and that we did survive camps. But when this book came out and the movie, we took them, and then when we came home, we were discussing it. There was a character there that was played by Salminio that was in Auschwitz. And I told the kids at that point that I was in Auschwitz, and my husband told them the experience. And from that time on, they asked every questions about the camp. We also emphasized one thing about Israel. We emphasized that Israel is the most important thing to exist, because if there was an Israel in the 30s, in the early 40s, we would have not been they would have bombed the railroad track to Auschwitz. They would have done something. They would have helped us. So it is very important that Israel exists. Our son is a very strong Zionist.
Yeah,
our
you
daughter,
had some pictures
yes,
of your...
they both belong to Junior B'nai B'rith. They went to the Jerusalem gathering. It's my daughter in Yad Vashem. I don't know how good that you can see that. And there is the same friends went to the gathering with our daughter and our son in Jerusalem. And Stephen was after he graduated high school, he went to Israel and he talked about it. He was in Boston in MIT, and he talked in all the colleges about Israel. He became like a shaliach. Do you know what a shaliach is?
A messenger.
Okay, he was really not being paid by the Israeli, but he talked to students, and every time during the vacation he would volunteer for a kibbutz while he was in MIT and take a group of young men, women with him. When he graduated MIT, he came to us and he said, now I'm going to move to Israel. I don't know for how long, but I'm moving. Now, you always told us how important this for Israel too, so you cannot say to me, I can't go, because I'm going. You cannot be hypocrite. Now, Stephen went, and though he was after college and he did not need to go to army, he went to the army. This is one of the pictures where Stephen is in the army. Because he had this high education, MIT especially, they made him a chief medic. And he was trained in Tel Aviv and at the hospital Tel HaShemer. You know that hospital? That's where the soldiers are. He was trained there for 18 months. And he was, by the way, he was in the Lebanon action. They don't call it a war. He was in Lebanon. And he witnessed, and did affect him a little bit. He stayed in Israel 10 years. At this moment, he's here with his wife and children in the United States, but they are going back. We don't know when, a year or two, 3, but he's going back. Very strong Zionist. Our daughter is too, but I guess they were brought up this way, so we can't.
What stands out most in your memory of this period of your life, this whole saga from 1939 on?
After 39.
From 1939.
39, well, I would say that Auschwitz is probably the worst time of my life, is Auschwitz. The day my mother died in the ghetto. The day where I had to, when they caught me on the street and I had to come home by myself, and I was positive they're going to kill me. Right after liberation, this was before liberation, when we got that food and everybody was dying around us. There are many things. If I think of good things, if the holidays come, the older I get, the more I think about my grandmother's house and the holidays, and especially Seders, which was so wonderful. And all the people and all the family, and I try to do this. My daughter is, every time we have the holiday, I'm so happy that Stephen is now, for the last 3 years here with his family, so we can have Seders. And I try to remember, and do it the way we do it from the first page to the last, the Haggadah. Because tradition is very important. Every Friday night my children come for dinner. Tradition is very important, and it seems that my daughter-in-law is doing exactly the same thing, though she was brought up on a kibbutz. And on a kibbutz is a different way of living. Friday night is become, and this kibbutz is not religious, but she's doing exactly, if I don't make Friday night, she makes traditional Friday night and cooks and bakes, and the kids Jonathan is 7.5, and he goes to Salomon Schechter. That's a private Hebrew school. Daniel is 4 and speaks, they're all bilingual. She does not speak English to her children. And Anat is 1.5 years. It's a little girl. And they both, all 3 of them are bilingual. My son speaks English to them, and my daughter knows Hebrew. So it seems that it's going to go on, which
Full
makes us
circle.
very, very
Yeah.
happy
Yeah.
because of the tradition will go on. And I'm happy it worked out that way. I'm happy to be alive, and I'm going to go on talking about this because I don't want this to happen again. And it's already coming. Nazis are all over. And we better be aware of it and not make fun out of them, because that's how Hitler started. They said he was a maniac. You have to pay attention.
I think we're about to cut tape, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Genia Litwok, very much.
I want to thank you for doing this. It is for our, I'm very happy to do it. I hope young people will
I
listen.
hope so, too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Cut tape.
Okay.